Welcome to Bear Down Ballers. I'm your host, AJ BRAMLETT. Back again this week with my super producer, Ryan Wall. And rough week for our Cats, man. What were your thoughts on last weekend's games in Washington State?
Yeah, I mean, most of these weeks, AJ, we come on here and it's all good.
Yeah.
But, every team hits the rock at some point, and Arizona looks like they hit that wall. They just couldn't get it going against Washington. They did escape, obviously, a 3-point win, which was still good. You still kind of got to get the W on the board. But what were your thoughts in this game? And just overall, some of the guys, Kirk Kriisa, Courtney Ramey, haven't been shooting the ball like they did the first part of the season.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about that throughout the year this year, that our outside shooting has been up and down, and we've usually been able to overcome that. You know what I mean? And these two games were tough, and Washington played really. In the Washington game, they played well. They had some size that could kind of match up, with us down low. They played really aggressively, shot the ball well, and I thought that was a really good victory, actually. I mean, it was a tough game the entire way through, but we were able to make the plays that we needed to, down the stretch to get that win, and I thought that was a really solid victory for us. And I wasn't surprised that it was kind of a closer game. Washington had been kind of up and down, but they're a very talented team. Now, the Washington State game was a different story. I think the first 5 minutes of the game, I was like, this doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? It just didn't. The energy, wasn't there. We shot the ball badly, and they were making shots, man. They made some tough shots in that game from three, and guys were hot and had confidence, and I think their game plan worked really well, and we just could never get it going. So, and that's kind of the first time this year that I think from start to finish that we were just flat, man. We just didn't make a run. We didn't come back. And we were just kind of dull. So, and that happens, during the season, and obviously shooting 16% from 3-point percentage in that game does not help. You're not going to win very many games like that. And so, it's another opportunity for us to reset. Tommy, spoke about it, getting in practice and really dialing in on some stuff that we need to improve on. And, we'll have another opportunity, obviously, tonight, with Oregon State. But what were your thoughts on both of those games and kind of what you saw?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about one guy who I think might have had his best game as a Wildcat during his first year. That's Kylan Boswell against Washington. He was excellent, 9 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, had a couple big threes down the stretch there, played 20 minutes. What do you think about his play? And do you think that maybe we continue to see him play more in crunch time at the end of these games?
Absolutely, because we talked about it last week on the pod here that you could see Kylan coming, and he'd been playing well. It hadn't shown up totally in the scorebook with big points or big assist numbers or whatever, but it did against Washington, and he has it. I mean, he's going to be a superstar for us, and it's just he's young, and but he's making steps forward each game, taking big shots and having the confidence to make those shots. At that age and where he is right now is just a key point for us. He's fun to watch. I like his energy. He's a really high level passer. I'm going to throw this out here now, and we can look back at it. I think by the time he's gone from Arizona, he's going to be the all-time leader in triple doubles for us at Arizona, because I could see him doing that. Like, he had 9, 6, and 6, I think, against Washington. Very limited minutes, but once he gets comfortable, a little bit older, like, he's going to have games where he's able to get triple doubles, and like, he's that type of special talent. I'm happy for him. I love him as a player, and we need him. We need him to continue to develop. If we can get him, consistently scoring a little bit more off the bench and providing that punch for us every game, as well as his ball handling and playmaking abilities, that's going to be huge for us as we get into, deep depths of the Pac-12 and then into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, imagine him playing 32, 35 minutes around tonight. I mean, he's going to be incredible for this Arizona program. But another guy that has been coming on as of late, had a slow start to the year, is Pelle Larsson. We've talked a lot about Pelle Larsson. Tommy's talked about Larsson's, kind of slow start. But this game, he had 12 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, made 2 3-pointers. So, yeah, this was a good game for him. What do you think of that performance, and what do you think his ability to get to that next level in offense can do for this Wildcat team?
I mean, we need him. We've been talking about that since the beginning of the year, and he's played really well. He went through a little shooting slump. earlier in the season where his 3-point ball wasn't going in. But he's played extremely hard on defense. He's a great cutter, offensive rebounder, good finisher around the basket. And now he's getting more comfortable with his shots starting to go in now. And that just gives him even more confidence. And he's a tough matchup. He's a big dude out there, strong. He's aggressive. I love him as a player. And if we can get him, playing consistent ball and then, get the 3-point shots to kind of come back around for Courtney and Kerr, which they will, we're going to be fine. And, I think the other thing that affected us last week was Umar and his health. He was sick, wasn't feeling well. And, I think that affected his game. You could tell that he just wasn't kind of himself, last week. And I'm sure he'll be back to, full strength this week. But no, I love what I've seen from both Kylan and Pella recently. They're definitely on the upswing.
Yeah, I mean, getting the Umar, if he's putting up numbers like 15 and 7 rebounds on an off night, I mean, that just shows the growth of Umar Ballo. But the other half of the Arizona's Twin Towers, if you will, Jules Tabellas, another double-double, 15 points or 18 points, 10 rebounds. He was great in this game, and it just continues to seem that every game, Jules just his kind of just gets better and shows different ways that he can affect the team.
Yeah, I mean, he's incredibly consistent this year, and really he should be in. And I think people are starting to talk about a little bit now, like he should be in running for National Player of the Year with the season that he's having. I mean, he's had big games in every single big matchup that we've had this year. He's been the only consistent guy, on the offensive end that's really showed up every game and provided, what we're expecting of him or more. And just the way that he plays and, with the energy and effort and the way that he runs the floor and, the way that he's rebounding and playing defense this year, he's just a really, really special player. And it's good to see because of, the way that, his season ended last year, that he's come back and just really cemented, himself as one of the top players in college basketball on a nightly basis. And, he's to have a weapon like that and the way that he, really facilitates everything that we do on the offensive end as well is just, it's a great thing for us to have. And I think, we're going to continue to see him continue to grow and blossom and be, the best player that he can be, which right now is one of the best players in college basketball.
Yeah, on the overall season, he's averaging 21 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, a block a game on 57% shooting from the field and almost 80% shooting from the free throw line. I mean, this guy has done it all. And you could say also he could be the most improved player in the country. Yeah. I mean, he went from averaging 14 points, 6 rebounds, to, like I said, 21 and 9, almost a double-double every night. And this guy is just consistent every single night, and he's really incredible. But AJ, as you mentioned before, they did lose to Washington State. Arizona lost 74-61. Moved to 3-2 in Pac-12 play, 14-2 on the overall season. What were your overall? You said that they were flat, and I kind of felt that too. Arizona, they seem like they always get off to sometimes a slow start, but they always bounce back. But what do you think was most concerning? I mean, obviously the shooting, but why don't you think any of their guys could get going outside of Tabellas?
I think Washington State played really well, to be honest. I think that they took us out of a lot of what we wanted to do in our offense, forced us into, incurred, 2 for 11 from 3 in that game. A lot of long, hurried threes at the end of shot clock or possessions. And, they played really well. The big guy battled us inside, gave us some trouble in there too. But it was just an off night for us. And we just didn't seem connected in this game. And that's kind of the first time that I've seen that this year from our team. And, this is the kind of year where those things can kind of happen in conference play, but it's not anything to be alarmed about. I've seen people, losing their minds and, this is the end, or we played awful, we're not going anywhere this year. And everyone just needs to chill out. We're going to be fine. I want to see how they respond tonight, against Oregon State. But, it's just one of those games where you can break down the film and you can learn a lot from it. And I'm sure that's what Tommy's done this week in practice. I know that Kern, Courtney want to shoot the ball better, which they will. That just happens in the course of a season. But as long as we have the energy and the defense is holding us, up, I think we're going to be just fine, man. It's just one of those games where you don't expect that, obviously, because I think where we have like a 28-game win streak at home, haven't lost there in a long time. But all streaks come to an end, and now we need to get back on the job and get a tough road victory, at Oregon State tonight.
Yeah, Arizona, fell 4 spots in the AP poll rankings. But, like you said, there's still a lot of opportunity this
Yeah.
season, a bunch of games to be played. They still have to play the California schools, 2 times each. It's the first time they'll play UCLA and USC coming up in a couple of weeks, which that'll be good. But even in a loss, I thought this was one of TEBBS's most dominant
Yeah.
games. Second straight double-double. How big and how valuable do you think he is to this team? Because even in a game where he scored 29 of the team's
Yeah.
61 points, just no one else could get it going. And just imagine if TEBBS was closer to the player he was last year and
Yeah.
didn't take this huge step.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is like he's incredible every night, and put up 29 in that game. We would have been blown out by 30 if he didn't have that huge game. You know what I mean? And so he's just a guy that works his butt off. Like I said, the conditioning that he has to have to play the way that he does is a testament to him and his hard work in the off season and throughout the season to keep his body in great shape, because the sprinting the court every time down like that is just, it's a hard thing to do, and it wears guys down. And he's really learned how to use his body and use angles to score and facilitate easy baskets for himself. He's shooting the ball well from outside, from the 3-point line when he does shoot it. And he's just a really, really good player and solid player. And he does it, with kind of a cold, cool mentality too, which I love. He's not too up or too down. You see him get fired up a little bit sometimes, but he's just like a machine, man. And so he's the key to our team. He's playing incredibly consistent basketball, and we're happy to have Big Zoo. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Kirk Kriisa a little bit here, AJ.
No.
And I wanted to ask you if you think he's kind of regressing to the player he was last season, the guy that would, take a lot of 3-pointers, and when he's not making them, he still would be taking them. And, over the last 3 games, he's shooting just about 26% from 3. I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I think he's see, all seasons have ups and downs, man. He shot it really well earlier in the season. He's going to have some times. He's a streaky shooter, so he's going to have some times where he's really hot, and he's going to have some times when he misses. Now, 2 for 11 is a lot of misses, in a game, but a lot of, like I said, a lot of those were kind of rushed threes where he had to shoot them. He took a couple that were probably ill-advised, but I like it, man. I love Kurt, and I think he's just got to keep shooting through it. I'm sure Tommy, talked with him about other ways that he can affect the game, which he's still doing a good job on defense. He's still facilitating, passing the ball well, but finding more opportunities for him to get wide open shots or get to the free throw line or whatever will help. But it's just it was a few bad shooting games, and nobody's jumping off the Kurt bandwagon. He's going to get back to it. He's going to have I expect him to have a big game tonight on the road and play really well and facilitate the team, and we're going to be fine with him, man. I love Kurt.
Yeah, and AJ, let's move on. And like you said, Arizona has 2 games this week. Oregon State tonight, at Oregon State, and then they go to Eugene, wrap it up this Saturday for 2 games. But yeah, AJ, a team, can have a down game or 2, but you can't have a couple down weeks. So do you fully expect Arizona to bounce back here tonight?
I do. They've shown that all year long that they, when things have been down, they've come back and responded well. I'm sure that the practices weren't easy or short, this week, and really dialed in on some things that they can help. And I think we're going to come out with great effort. Pac-12 road games are not easy, and Oregon State, has been up and down. They beat Washington, lost to USC by 1, and the last 2 games they've kind of struggled a little bit. So they're going to be wanting to have a good, performance on their home court. So I don't expect either one of these games to be easy, but I think we go in there and play really good Arizona basketball and get back to where we were, before last week happened.
So you expect two victories, I assume?
I expect Oregon State victory. I think Oregon is, who knows, man. The Oregon, historically plays really well against us. They lost to Colorado by 27 points the other game, but then went and beat Utah at Utah by 10 points. So you kind of don't know what Oregon team is going to show up. They usually show up pretty well against us, and it's a big game for them every single year. So I expect that to be a battle, but I think we need one of those, big time games again on the road, where we can come together, play really good basketball, and get the victory. So I think that we're going to play well in both of these games, and I expect us to come out of there not with blowout victories or anything, but to be right there to get both wins at the end.
Yeah, Arizona does have a tough next 2 weeks, after they come home from the Oregon, playing the Oregon schools. They come home and they play USC and UCLA back to back. So do you think and do you expect this Arizona team to kind of, as you said, some people are down on Arizona right now, as you could expect them to be after two disappointing games. But do you think they can get back on track and get back on the national and in the national spotlight this week?
Well, we have the opportunity coming up in these next 4 games, right? I mean, the Oregon game is going to be, a highly, watched game by people nationally. And then obviously with UCLA, it's going to be a humongous game for us there, and USC as well. So we have the opportunity to, and they've shown that when they have the opportunity in big time games this year, they've played really well. We've had our best showings almost in those type of games. So it's the games where we've kind of gone in and thinking that we're going to win, I think, that we've struggled and not been ready to play. So I expect us to be ready to play. I think we're going to get back to playing really good basketball and see us, guards shoot the ball better, Kerr and Courtney shoot the ball better, and Pella continue on his upswing, Zoo do his thing, and then Umar will be back to his self. So, and I think we're going to be just fine.
Yeah, well, AJ, we have a great guest on today, a former teammate of yours. Tell everybody who we got.
Yeah, I got my guy, my brother, one of the best just overall dudes that I know and an opportunity to know in my life. He's on the '97 championship team, has a unique perspective on Arizona basketball. Mr. Quinn Tebbs joins us next on Bear Down Ballers. All right, welcome to Bear Down Ballers. This is AJ Bramlett. I got one of my good brothers, a member of the 1997 National Championship team, one of the greatest all-around guys that I know. Mr. Quinn Tebbs joins us on Bear Down Ballers today. QT, what's happening, man?
Thanks. Hey, I'm sitting here in Utah and trying to, make a few dollars every day, sitting here at the home desk, but doing well. And my voice is a little bit low. I've got pneumonia, so I apologize for the deep voice, but I'm happy to be here, excited to see your face and talk some basketball.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you playing hurt. You know what I mean? Playing through the injury.
You got it. You got to do your best, AJ.
That's right. That's right.
When you're called to duty, you better be ready.
That's right. So yeah, no, let's just dive in, man. I just wanted to, to get your thoughts about your time in Arizona, and we had some great times, man. Obviously the '97 run, which we'll get to in a little bit, but can you talk about just your time at U of A and what it meant to you and the experiences that you had, when you were there?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. Again, my story is a little bit different than yours. Everybody's got a different story, right? I was there for about 2.5 years, and I look back at it, and it's just, it's one of those memories you look back on, and it's a sweet memory and a highlight of one of the highlights of my life. It was just it was a great group of guys, great teammates. One thing I always talk about when I talk to people about my time at Arizona is it was just a really good group of guys, just good group of people, very good, high character people, great teammates. Everybody treated each other with respect, and we're all friends, and just a good group of guys. And I think that was, kind of a testament to what the kind of people and players that Coach Olson recruited. He seemed to recruit good character guys, right? I mean, you look at so many guys that have gone through the program and what they're doing now and where they're at, and for the most part, they all seem to be, great fathers, great, those that are married, great husbands, great friends, great teammates. They seem to be doing well in life, just good, like I said, good high character people. And I love my experience in Arizona. I was a red shirt after I served that 2-year mission. It's funny. I talked to JB when JB comes in town with the Wizards and stuff. He'll always send me a little message and get me tickets to the game. And we went out to dinner last year. And when I came on my recruiting trip, I actually came on the recruiting trip the year that it was, Khalid and JB and Dave, that they went to the Final Four. And then I went 2 years on a mission. So I actually came on my recruiting trip with K-Rock, with Kevin Ethan. I remember Coach O picking us up in his big Lexus at the airport and showing us his big ring, his rings and stuff, driving to and so it was a lot of fun. And I got to meet those older guys, and I was just there for a little bit, but I went back from that trip, and Coach Olson offered me the scholarship, and he said he'd let me go on my mission. And I came back and came back to that year that was just that was magic, right?
Yep.
And I was just lucky to be a part of that ride and be a part of that team. And it's just, once in a lifetime, right? That how many people are part of that and get to be a part of that. There's not a lot of people that get to be a part of that experience. And so it was awesome. And I look back with fond memories and a lot of fun stories and a lot of funny stories. And, and also I kind of look back to in the whole thing with, and I still kind of regret leaving when I did.
Yeah.
And, I was that year after, then that was that third year where I transferred, and it's kind of a bittersweet thing for me. And a lot of people don't know that story, but I had
Can you talk about that story though? Because I think that's something that, a lot of people don't know, and it should be.
There were a couple of things. There were a couple of things that played into it for me. I don't know if you guys remember or not. I was engaged to be married.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And it was a gal I went to high school with. And and also I had a family member that was diagnosed with leukemia.
Yeah.
And so I broke that engagement, which kind of messed with my mind a little bit. And then the family member dealing with cancer was just kind of a thing that just kind of pushed me over the edge.
Yeah.
And I just mentally, I just got out of it. I just felt like I needed to be home. I wanted to be home, to be around my family where I could play close to home. And I still came home and, played 2.5 years of D1 ball and played up at Weber State where my older brother played, and started there for a couple of years and had a nice, had a good little run there, and it was fun. And, I can't complain, but I was close to home. And I was with my grandfather when he passed away. And that was a special thing to me, and something that, and he was, he's one of my personal heroes, kind of like a second father to me. And it was just a really tough thing, but also it was very bitter. I remember going in and sitting down with Rosborough, and Ross trying to talk me out of it left and right. Hey, don't do this. Don't do this. You're in a good spot. You're going to play this year. You're going to get some minutes. You're about in that 7th, 8th spot right now. So, just stick around. You'll be happy. And Coach Olson, same thing. And it was just one of those things. And they said, and Coach O was really great about it. I said, Quinn, I respect whatever choice you make. But we want you to know that we want you here still. We don't, we feel like there's a role for you. But again, we support you. We respect it. I'll stand behind you. And they were great. Like after I left, and some of the letters that they wrote to some of the local schools here that I was talking to, I went down and talked to Majerus at Utah, and I looked really close at Utah. And then I know the coach really up at Weber, but they were super supportive. Coach O and Coach Roz. And again, it was one of those things that was, again, I look back, it is super bittersweet, because again, I loved my teammates. Yeah. And, we had a great group of guys, and the guys that came after were solid guys. And, that I think the year I left, that was when Rich and Luke and Lauren came in, and, just another good group of guys, Ricky, and, the younger guys were great too. So it was, it was tough, but again, it's funny because when I came here, I actually met my wife, who I've been married to now for 24 years. I met her, I think 2-3 months after I came home. I met her, and I know who knows if I would have met her or not, if I would have stayed. So again, I can't, we're
that's a win. That's a big win.
A great family. So, but I really look back at that time as it was a wonderful time in Tucson, and it just, again, and what made it wonderful were you guys, were my teammates, and we're the coaches. Coach Roz, right? Coach Roz is Coach Roz is amazing. So he makes wonderful for everybody, I think.
Absolutely. Roz is a one of one, man. You
Oh,
know
he's
what I
awesome.
mean?
Yeah, he is one of a kind.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he
So,
is.
all of us kind of have a different, story about our relationship with Coach O, and you mentioned it a little bit about what you went through with the transfer. But what do you remember about your relationship with Coach, and what things did you take away from him that you still use today?
Well, Coach O, he was. It was an interesting. My relationship was a little bit different, and again, you played for Coach O, and you kind of understand kind of going up through the ranks and how that works. And it's funny. I talked about Coach O. He was kind of like. It's funny. I always tell the story. One thing about Coach O, I never heard the man curse.
Yeah.
In the whole time I was, and he just had that old school, like that. He had those old school sayings that just used to crack me up. Like for heaven's sakes, good gracious. My goodness, I remember some of his little things he said. I remember one time in practice, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but we were practicing and something happened, and Miles said something. Miles he cussed at somebody. Coach O was like, "All right, stop practice." And he came over and he told me, he's like, "Miles, get off the floor. You have the mouth of a sailor."
Yeah.
And he kind of shuffled him off the floor, gave him a side kick with his foot in the butt, like, "Get off the floor." And I stuff like that is so fun. I remember one time with Justin Wessel, he got mad at Justin for something. He's like, "Justin, you are slower than molasses."
Yeah.
And just those old funny sayings used to basically kill me, right? But again, I respected that from him. I thought it was a respectable thing, and again, he wasn't he wasn't I wouldn't say he wasn't a screamer, and he raised his voice, but he never screamed and yelled and lost his cool. He was just very steady, and you respected him, right? And also I just I respected the way that he. Again, just the way he would try and do things with us as a team, and we'd go up to their house and have a breakfast, or we'd spend Thanksgiving together. And he tried to really kind of develop that idea of family and brotherhood, and you could see how that kind of went through the different generations of the guys that played for Coach O, and how everybody kind of knows each other, and everybody talks to each other, and you can go and talk to guys that. When we had the memorial for Coach O, and a bunch of us went back to, but I remember going and talking to guys that I'd never talked to, and it's just like almost talking to one of my teammates, right? And it's just that's one thing I respected, was just the aspect of the importance of family and togetherness and brotherhood, and how he kind of instilled that. And I think there's a lot of lessons that a lot of us learn from that, and how to be men, right? Yep. How to be honorable, and how to be men of character, and how to be honorable men, and how to be good family men, and things that continue on after and out, off the court and outside of basketball too.
Absolutely. I mean, and we all feel it, man. And it is true that the connection through the generations is something special. I don't think a lot of programs really are like
there's
that.
Not.
You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter if you didn't play with the guy, and I've played overseas, and some guys who've been playing, were near me, and they played for Coach O. You can call them, and we go out to dinner, and just like you said, it was just like they were one of our members of our team, man. It's just Arizona basketball is something special because of Coach O, man. Let's talk about go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, it's funny. I've had some interesting stories just with guys from other generations. And again, like I always say, you've got your totem pole in Arizona basketball, right? You got the guys that are at the very top, and you have the guys that are at the very bottom. In Arizona basketball, and the lore of Arizona basketball, I'm probably at the base of the totem pole, right? So, but it's interesting. With JB, I didn't play with JB.
Yeah.
But again, when he comes to town, I see him, I talk to him. I was down in Las Vegas we were celebrating my birthday, went down with a bunch of friends, and we were sitting at dinner at a place over at the Cosmopolitan. And one of my buddies, he sends me a text message. He's like, "Hey, you sit right there. I'm coming in with somebody. There's somebody here that wants to. I'm bringing to you one of your friends." I'm like, "Who's it?" He's like, "Just wait." And so he comes walking in, and he's there with Channing, and Channing's like, I'm like, "Channing." He's like, "Quinn," and he comes over and talks to us and hugs and stuff. And they were running their podcast down there at the time, out of the wind. Yep. They're doing one of theirs, and I met the gal that they work with, Allie, and they were like, "You know what? Come over tomorrow and jump on our podcast and stuff, and talk with Channing and Rich." And
Nice.
it's stuff like that, that's great. And that I love. It's funny talking about Arizona basketball. We were in Mexico of all places on another trip. And I ran into, I'm sitting there, I'm talking to this guy, and they're like, oh, there's a guy over there that played college ball and played in the NBA, and he played for Duke. I'm like, who? And it was Chris Duhon.
Wow.
So I went up to Duhon and, started giving him a little bit of, just kind of razzling. He was talking about how they beat those guys in the national championship and was giving me a hard time. And anyways, but we started talking about, Arizona versus Duke basketball. And it's interesting. And I think Duke is a little bit like Arizona, where they kind of have that brotherhood, but I don't think it's the same.
No.
It's quite not. And I was just like, and he's like, it's really cool to kind of hear how those Arizona guys they're all friends, and they all kind of know each other. And it's just, and again, that's a testament to Coach O and Coach Roz and the way those guys did that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just continues on, man.
It absolutely does.
Tommy's doing a good job of it too, now.
He's doing a great job.
We'll get to that, but let's talk about the 97 season, man. Let's just take me through kind of your thoughts of it, you watching, your perspective. You can run through a little bit of just the season, and then what your memories and recollections of the 97 run were.
Well, right. Who would have thought, right? Coming into that, like, I think that they were, that 97 year was a year. I think that they brought in some guys and were building around, I think, more of a preparation to make a run in 98.
Yep.
And I don't think, obviously, at the beginning of the year, I don't think we thought that we could, be a national championship team by the end of the year. But, and I just remember that. I remember that season. I remember there were some ups and there were a lot of downs. I remember that final road trip.
Yeah.
Before the tournament and losing both those Bay Area games. And, there's a fun story there in the locker room that was pretty memorable to me and Jado. And
tell us that story. What happened to that story? let's dive in. Let's dive into that a little bit.
I remember those two games we lost. We lost to Stanford and Cal, right? And I remember we were after the Cal game. We were there in the Cow Palace. Remember we played in the Cow Palace in that old locker room?
That barn.
That barn. And I remember after the game we had lost. And one thing about our team in 97, like we were a lot of fun, right? Like we worked hard and played, we worked hard but we also played hard, and we joked around, and, a lot of fun, a lot of joking around. I remember, so me and Jado, Jason Lee, for people don't know what Jado is, but named Jason Lee and Justin Wessel. And I think maybe John was or not, but we were kind of sitting in the corner after the game, and game was over and we had lost, and, we'd already been talked to a little bit. We were just kind of getting ready and laughing a little bit. And Coach Jay, he ran the gray squad, right? Where we would be the guys, the practice guys. And he comes over and just gets in our faces, like, you know what? It's the reason we lost this road trip was because of you guys. And you're over here playing grab ass. And this is a joke. And he's like yelling at us. And I remember I'm like, hey. And again, my background, right? Like I was a freshman, but I was the same age as, I was the oldest guy, I think, oldest guy on the team. I'd gone on a mission for 2 years, and I'd, been away 2 years, lived on my own, and dealt with adults and gone through that whole experience. And so I remember I stood up and I tried to put my arm around Coach Jay. I was like, hey, Coach Jay, let's just relax a little bit. And I remember he shrugged me off, get your hands off me. And he sat back like he wanted to fight. Like, I was like, whoa. I was like, Coach Jay. And I remember Jado stepping up. He's like, hey, Phil, I don't think you want to do that. And I remember Ross jumping in. I mean, Coach Johnson, he was ready to fight me. I was like, whoa, what's going on here, man? He was convinced that the gray squad, we were the reason that we lost that final road trip.
It was your fault. It was your guys' fault, man.
It was on us. And again, he's probably, we shouldn't have been over there, joking and stuff and laughing after loss, getting ready. But again, I could see where he got frustrated, could see it and wanted to probably use it as a teaching moment. I don't know. Yeah. Look back at it and laugh at it now, right? But I remember going into the tournament and we finished fifth in the pack.
Fifth in the pack, yep.
If I remember right. And I remember a lot of people were like, oh, this, this has kind of been a disappointing year. You kind of heard the buzz and, around with the fan base, and, people were a little disappointed in us. And I remember us talking about that. But then again, I remember always Josh going into the tournament, like, Josh was like, hey, we can do this. We just got to believe. We got to believe. And Josh was always, trying to talk everybody. And that tournament run was, special. I remember that first game against South Alabama was super scary. I mean, when we were down 10 with how much time to go. And I remember those first 3 games. You were huge those first 3 games. I think you had like, didn't you? You had like 15, 16 boards or something against them. I think you had like double digit. You had those first 3 games. I think you were big on the boards for us. But again, it just was that every game was kind of a grind, right? I mean, 2 overtime games, and that South Alabama game was scary. And again, it was just going farther. I remember we got to Kansas in the Sweet 16, and we got those guys. And I think that's when we started to really think, you know what, we can do this.
Yeah.
And it was just, just to be a part of it, like it was, and even through the whole thing, we were still having fun and joking around through the whole tournament. And, I remember, I think Coach Olson kind of let us do that because he realized one thing he was good at. And Coach O was a coach that would let his ponies run.
Yeah.
Like when you got your big horses, let them do what they're there to do. He didn't try to, like, he was a great coach, but he let guys do their thing too. And he just let us be who we were.
Right.
Which is, I think it's hard for some coaches to do, but on coach, again, Coach O was, let the horses run. And that's one thing, was just, Miles had that. Miles great, and Bib was great, and JT was great. I mean, everybody just showed up and did what they were supposed to do. And it was just, it was an unreal run, right? Like, still only team to beat 3 number 1 seeds. Is anybody else ever going to do it?
Still the best one.
I don't think so. I hope not.
Yeah, exactly. Every year it gets better too.
I know, right? Like, for my own selfish reasons, isn't that terrible? Just,
that's right.
But anyways, but again, it was just to go through it with our teammates and that group of guys. I mean, it doesn't get any better.
Yeah. It was just fun, really, really fun, great memories, man. So
yeah,
but I tell the people this all the time though. The next year we were so much better, man. The 98 year, we were a machine, man. Like,
we were killing. Remember the tournament? We were killing people. I know that was first 3 games, and then again the biggest tournament.
What's your thoughts on why we didn't make it back to the 4 that year? I have my own thoughts, but like, what I'd like to get people's perspectives who are on the team.
Dude, and I hate this because, again, I'm from Utah.
Yeah.
And those dang Utes are a thorn in my side. I mean, even this year, right? Like, we have no business losing to Utah.
Right.
Utah, and no disrespect to Utah, but they're not that Utah team that we lost to in the tournament in 98. Right. And again, that was, anytime Utah beats Arizona, anything, I got a big group of friends, and guess what? My phone is getting lit up, and look at Arizona, number 4 in the country. Yeah, right. They just lost to Utah. Look at Arizona. They just lost to Washington State. I mean, every time they lose, I get crap from people. But I remember there was a guy here in Utah. He was a longtime sportscaster and news guy here. His name's Bill Marcroft. And it's funny. He used to like do the games. My uncle Jeff, he played up at Utah State, and in Utah, my dad played at BYU. My uncle Terry was an All-American at BYU, and so my family's kind of known in Utah for playing basketball. And I had some cousins that played here, and my brother, and I played up at Weaver. So, but Bill, I remember interviewing me before the game, the day before the game, and he said, Arizona, because we were the number 1 team in the tournament. We were blowing through guys, and I remember him telling me, he's like, what is it going to take for Utah to beat Arizona? And this, and I said, Bill, one, they're not going to beat us. I said, we're playing too good. We've got, at the time, we had 3 All-Americans on the team, and 4 with JT, who was the player of the year the following year.
Yep.
And And I said, I said, what's going to happen? I said, Miles, Mike D, and Bibby, I said, all three of those guys are going to have to be off in the same game. And odds of that happening are very slim to none. And guess what happened?
Exactly that.
I mean, self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Oh,
and,
man.
and everybody, and here I hear like everybody, chalks up to Majerus in this. Oh, that triangle and two was genius. It was amazing. I'm like, triangle and two. I'm like, if you sit two guys in those corners and you have one guy just hit 2, 3, 4 shots in a row, guess what? They pull out of that.
Yep.
And it turns into zone or man on man, and we blitz those guys.
Yep.
And again, it was just Mike D was cold. Miles didn't play good. Bib did not have his best game. I mean, I think you and JT were the only guys that
I think we were the only ones that have decent games. Yeah.
And I remember getting in the end of that game, just going in thinking, I'm gonna have to go home and deal with this bull crap. Because what I would do, I got another great story about that. You'll love this story. You will love this story. So we lost to Utah, and again, that's what happened in '98. I mean, if we get by Utah, we don't lose that game. It's just a repeat of what we did the year before. And we had already didn't we already play? Did we play Carolina earlier in preseason and beat them earlier that year? That was the year before.
That was the year we won it.
That's right, year before. But again, going into the tournament and seeing Carolina and Kentucky again, where we had just beat them the last year, I think we have the mental upper hand on those guys, and I think we repeat.
Absolutely.
And it was a freak night, and just things happen, right? And again, that triangle and two, everybody knows triangle and two is a bull crap defense. I mean, it's so, and again, it worked, but you knock down a couple corner threes and they're out of it. But anyway, so when I would come back in the summer times in between, going down there, I would go up and I'd work the Utah camp. When I worked at basketball camp, then I'd stay and play pickup ball with all those guys. So I knew all those guys and hung out with them in the summer, like with Miller and Doliak and Alex Jensen, who's an assistant with JT with the Jazz now. He was on that team, and he did a great job on Miles in that game. As a kid, I grew up playing AAU ball with, was a fantastic player. But so the way Majerus would run his basketball camps, he'd run these stations, you'd work for these stations. Well, the last station, you'd go into the locker room and they'd have their video playing of their run. And guess what game they highlighted every time? Utah beating Arizona. And I'd have to sit through that. I sat through that, AJ, for 5 days in a row.
That's
had to watch that. And at the end of the camp, they get out and do you remember Britton Johnson? Jeff Johnson, Britton Johnson, that team, Johnson brothers. Britton playing the NBA, nice player. 6'10", 6'11", kind of athletic guy. And they get up and they talk about their story. And the last day they brought they bring out their Final Four rings. And everybody gets a Final Four. I don't know if people know this, right? Everybody gets, the teams that don't win it get a silver ring, and the team that wins it gets a gold ring. And so they bring it up, they show their ring, and they'd always give me a little ribbing at the end of it. Hey, Quinn, you remember that game? In front of all the campers, I'd have to say, yeah, I get it. And so the last day I said, you know what? I got something for these guys. I got something for these guys on the last day of camp. I'm going to give them. And so they get up, we go through the things, and they do their spiel, and they talk about, pull out their silver Final Four ring, and they're fitting the bread. And when they gets done, and he said, "You remember this one?" I said, "I do." I said, "But," I said, really quick though, I said, "Let me ask you a question." I said, "You know what? Those silver rings you have, they're so nice. They're one of them." I said, "But let me ask you a question." I said, "I think if I remember right, I'm the only guy in this gym that has a gold one." And I just was like, and they just sat there and looked like, I was like, yeah.
Can't argue.
Yeah, you don't have a gold. I have a gold one though. So, I like that silver one, but I'll keep my gold one.
That's right.
It was so good. And it's funny because I'll run to these guys and they'll still talk to me about it. They're like, "You remember that time you dropped that on us in Garrison Camp?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember. I had to sit through a week of your bull crap."
That's the best thing about our run too, is that we beat all the number ones. So there's no, you guys, if someone lost and, you didn't play the toughest schedule, there's no questions about it. Right?
Oh, dude, it's funny. It's just funny to have the amount of just the run-ins and the stories and the things. It's been what, 20, how many years has it been? 97, we're 26 years.
Yeah.
Still like running into people, and people will still 26 years later, people still talk about or remember it. And they just like the little stories that come up and that you get to experience and have. And, it's just something that, we'll take with us our whole lives. And so you'll never forget that, right? Never, ever will we forget that.
No, man, it's a hell of a run.
No, the best.
Let me get your thoughts. Like you said, you were, I'm assuming you were at the Utah game when U of A came out, and get your thoughts on this year's team, like where they're at, where you think they need to make, adjustments or whatever to make a deep tournament run this year. What do you see from your perspective with this year's Cats?
It's this year's team. I remember when we came and went to the blue red game, and we came back for that little premiere of Coach O, that movie that they did for Coach O, that documentary. And I was sitting with Jay, next to Jay Stu, and I think Johnny Ash. We were talking. We're like, this team they look different, than any other Arizona team that you're used to seeing out on the floor. I joked around. I said, I don't know, because maybe it's just they got a bunch of white guys on the team this year. I don't know. Maybe is that why they look different? You just joke around, right? Like, we could do that and have fun that way and joke around. But the way they started the season, I was not expecting them to be, kind of solidly in the top 10 all year. I was thinking they would kind of bump around between 15-ish to 20-ish, right in there. And so I think that they're probably exceeding the preseason expectation. Again, there's a lot of playing. This UCLA game coming up is a big game, right? And what UCLA ranked 7th right now, or 6th, something like that. So I think that's going to be a real test. But again, they've proven that they can play. They beat Tennessee. That was a huge win. And again, it's funny. It's just like these games that they've lost, they're just games that they should win.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's just, I think they're solid. Looking at it now, if I were to say, I would guess they're probably going to the tournament at 2.
Yeah.
Right now with what they're doing. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
I think
that's sorry, I dropped something, AJ. But I think that's about where they're at. And obviously they're really strong with their bigs. Tubelis is a stud, and Ballo is a stud. And they're going to give a lot of people trouble there, but the game has obviously changed so much since we've been there. But the Tubelis kid has a good, he's a good, he's good from outside too, and so he's got a good, interior, exterior game. And the Kerr kid's a solid player. When he's on, I think they're really tough to beat. And so I just think it's just maturing throughout the season a little more. And you got to be, I think it's more of a mental thing. When you come in and you play teams that you think you should beat, sometimes there may be, I don't know if it's just a little bit of a mental breakdown or not, where it's a little like, oh, we got these guys and don't take us there. So I think it's just showing up and taking every game seriously, right? Because again, you've seen on any given night, any good team can lose. And so I don't know. I think it's more of just being more mentally prepared to play everybody, and having, just that attitude of like, hey, you know what, we've got to go in and, I don't care if it's the worst team in the pack. We've got to come in and play like we're playing the best team. I think it's more of a mental thing just on those 2 losses than anything.
So give me your prediction. Where do we land at the end of the tournament this year? What do you think?
Well, every year that I do my brackets, I always pick Arizona winning the national championship. I have terrible. Every year I'm like, well, we know what Quinn's doing. Arizona the national championship game.
It's because it's a win-win. Because if they lose, then we're still the only ones, and then if they win, then we're happy that. I know,
isn't it weird? Like you kind of have like that little like thing in the back of your head. You're like, oh, I want them to win, but then you're like, but do I really? That's so bad. So dumb. Just no, but it'd be cool to see. Last year I thought last year they were so good, and again, Tommy has done I think he's done a great job. The one thing I've really liked about him is again, I feel like he lets his guys go. He doesn't try to control every aspect of the game, and he lets his guys play. And I think he's a really good. I think he's a great players coach. I like the way that he's trying to create that idea of family, and he's big on bringing, the other guys back and, letting them get to be a part of the program and getting, and I like that. And so I mean, I would be shocked if they don't make it at least to the 8.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're pretty solid to get to that 16 for sure. I would say pretty solid 8. Then after that, it's a toss up, right? Like, as well as I know that is tough to do for anybody. But I mean, I see him making a nice run in the tournament. I don't see any reason why not. And they play good team ball. They've got really good ball movement. They're good at making the extra pass. They trust each other. I like the team aspect and how they play. They play very well together.
Yeah. I think Tommy's done a heck of a job, man, for the time that he's been there so far, just really establishing the identity of what Arizona basketball is again. And, he's done a good job of including all of us and the alumni, and really, like you mentioned, bringing everybody together again, which is a great feeling. And I think that I think they have a chance to make it to the 4 for sure. Obviously that's hard to do, just like you said, but if we, get some more consistent outside shooting and keep developing on the defensive end, the freshmen kind of come along a little bit, you kind of see them come along each game a little bit more, that we got a shot at it, man. And this year, when you look out there, I don't see any team that really scares me. Like there's, other years there's been a really dominant team, and it just isn't one this year.
Well, and also the thing that I just kind of noticed, have you know how deep he goes into his bench? I mean, they play 8-9 deep.
Right. Yep.
And to have that depth, and again, 8-9 deep with, there's 8-9 guys that are averaging 16 plus minutes a game.
Right.
And so to have that depth is a big deal, especially in NCAA in the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, with depth is a big deal at this level, and to be able to play, to go past 7 and be comfortable going past 7 is a huge deal. And that's why I feel like they should make a pretty deep run.
Yeah. It's be a fun ride to watch, man. It's been a really good 2 years for us. So
hey, your boy JT, he's been good to me here in Utah.
Yeah, you guys hang out. You guys get to spend a lot of time over there, or what?
I've been up to some games. I've talked to JT a few times. We haven't hung out. Again, those guys are so dang busy.
They're all over the place. Yeah.
And it's always like, okay, next time. But again, I get it. He's busy, but he's been great to me. I'll send him a text. Hey, you got any tickets lying around up there tonight? And he'll shoot me some tickets. I'll take my boys up, and taking some friends up, and he's, again, it's just being part of that, being part of that brotherhood, and that, having those guys and the friendships, and, JT, he's a great guy. I love JT. And better than anybody how great JT is. He's just as friendly and as personable and easy to talk to as they come, right?
Yep. Special guy, man.
Oh, he's the best. He's a stud.
Well, QT, man, I appreciate you taking the time today. Going to enjoy the rest of this season for our Cats. I'm sure we'll be talking in group texting as we get closer to the tournament, like we always do.
Right.
Much love for you, man. You're one of the best dudes I've ever known, and just
likewise, brother.
You tell the family hello, everybody
likewise.
over there. And
hey,
I'll talk to you soon.
I like that highlight of your boy, and the track you put it to was special.
He's working hard. I know you like that. There's me and Rakim. I saw you comment on it. I love it.
Awesome.
Right on, man. Bear down.
Love you, AJ. Thanks, brother.
Love you too, man. Thank you,
man.